Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining in Dr. Judy WTF. And this is a call-in show, everyone, so please do get on the couch, call in, talk to me. I prefer it to talking into a camera. And that number is 323-524-2599. My name is Dr. Judy Rosenberg, and I am the founder of the Be the Cause Mind Map System for Healing. And I am also the director of the Psychological Healing Center. And my purpose is to heal human disconnect. And tonight we're going to talk about a form of disconnect between employer and employee working for a narcissistic boss and what that does to the psyche. And of course, many of you already know that we repeat things, and that's why the show is called Dr. Judy WTF. What the Freud? Repetitive cycles of abuse, repetitive cycles of dysfunctional patterns. And the workplace is one place that it definitely shows up. And time again, I have people coming to see me, and they are all stressed out about work. They are working for a narcissistic boss, a dysfunctional boss, whether that person be male or female, makes no difference. The point is that we get ourselves in these horrible predicaments, and sometimes, let's face it, we need the paycheck, so we need to sign up, and we need the benefits. And as a matter of fact, it's kind of reminding me of a show I did called Golden Handcuffs. So check that one out. And it's reminding me of a series of three shows that are up there called Healing Corporate Disconnect. So we're going to talk a little bit about narcissistic bosses and their effects on the psyche, and why it is that you see yourself in this loop yet once again, and what it is that it is doing to your psyche, mind, body, soul, because the mind and the body are interconnected. And if one is affected, the other is affected. And so many times I'm asked to please sign off for days off. I need a break from work. I need to heal. And sometimes people do need a break from work because it just gets untenable. The stress is overwhelming, and then it starts affecting all kinds of things. So let us break it down a la mind map. And if you'd be so kind to put that mind map up there so that we can break it down. So you can see that the mind map is divided into 9 panels, and these 9 panels represent the past, which is the first 3 panels, the present, which is the craziness of today, and then the last 3 represent where we are going, which is shifting out of the mess and healing and balancing out and being the cause of a better outcome for part 2 of our life. And so if you look at panel number 1, think about it as the blueprint or the template. And in the background, you see the light. So the light is a metaphor for you. It is a metaphor for you in a healthier state, you in a state of self-actualization, if you will, your health, your emotional, and even your physical health. And the shadows represent the shadows of the past that block your growth, block your light. And what are these shadows? Simply put, they are the abuses and the neglects from childhood. And let me name them so that you're clear on what this is. Sorry, my voice at the end of the day, not so good. The abuses and the neglects that overshadow your emotional, physical well-being, and those would be physical abuse, pretty obvious, sexual abuse, pretty obvious, neglect, pretty obvious, smothering and controlling. And then we've got also the narcissistic abuse and the verbal abuse. And I'll get into the narcissistic abuse because that's what we're talking about today, is the boss, the narcissistic boss who puts his or her agenda without considering your feelings, that person who lacks empathy, that person who takes more than they give, the person who vampires your energy, and at the end of the day, you don't feel part of the team. As a matter of fact, you feel less than, and you come out of the workday feeling drained and unappreciated, and maybe worse, devalued and demeaned, and all kinds of things. So let's relate it to how you got into this hot mess in the first place. Again, there is a reality factor here. You need the paycheck. You like the line of work. You work very hard to get that job. Maybe they switched bosses on you. Who knows? Maybe you're in a phase of life where you have to learn that particular um, craft, or you have to learn that particular skill, and this is the only company that really offers it. In any case, it's kind of a hostage situation because you feel stuck, and you feel that you can't get out of it because you need them. And that need, let's call that the toxic tie. And actually, let's tie it in to childhood wounds. So when you're a child, you are in a hostage situation in the sense that you don't choose your parents. You don't choose what they're going to say to you and do to you or not do for you. You don't choose any of it. So there you are in a family, and if you're lucky, then in the family you get a good, solid set of parents who regard your feelings, who attune to you, who mirror you. Hopefully, parents that nurture you and give you all the elements of mental health, which is, according to John Bowlby, attachment theorist, father of attachment theory. In order to have a healthy human psyche, you have to be mirrored, attuned to, eye contact, skin contact, breastfeeding in an ideal world, parents that help you to regulate your emotions, parents that nurture each other and demonstrate a good parental blueprint, and all of that. And if you're lucky enough to have that, then you've got a high bar, and chances are that you're not going to get involved and embroiled in horrible relationships that then disintegrate and repeat what your family of origin blueprinted for you. Now, how does it relate to work? Well, work is kind of like a family, and it could be a very supportive family where it's synergistic and it's egalitarian in some ways. You go there and you put your time and skills into it, and they also support you and give you enough education to make you shine, and then you benefit. It's actually a synergistic, mutually beneficial relationship. My favorite kind. I call it the win-win situation. In a narcissistic system, it's not a win-win situation. And I do want to hear from you, and please do call in and understand that you can download a copy of my book. You can get the PDF version for free. If you want a hard copy of it, you can go to Amazon.com and order that. And you can also go to my merch department. I think it's under resources, and you can get the mind map video series, and you can also get t-shirts and other merchandise so that you can wear the mind map and be conscious daily of the process of healing, and understand that if you do trip up in life, which we all do, I definitely do, that there is a pathway out. And the more conscious you are of this pathway out, the quicker you can get out, and the less vulnerable you will be to unconscious forces. So back to that narcissistic boss. Every day I hear complaints from people that they're not happy at work. I hear that they're stressing, their back hurts, their head hurts, they're tired, they're drinking too much, they're smoking too much. They use all kinds of defense mechanisms to defend against a horrible work environment, and then they try to come home to their families and be that person that is the mother or the father or the lover or the partner or anything, and then they find themselves very, very depleted. So, what is narcissism from a mind map system? It is a system gone wrong where the parents put their own agenda, their own emotions before that of their children. There's obviously a lack of empathy there. And to make matters worse, they may use narcissistic defenses that that include demeaning you and devaluing you and destroying you and sometimes discarding you and in essence using you to fill their agenda and not considering your agenda. So what is a good boss? I think a good boss is somebody that considers your needs and considers your feelings and has a level of empathy and can step into your shoes and understand the challenges that you face. And particularly, I prefer people who are able to self reflect and self correct. What does that mean? Somebody who can own their own stuff. This is very important because in a work environment where people are always interfacing on different levels, and sometimes there's a hierarchy where there's a president or a vice president, and then there are different levels, lower management, middle management, upper management. There's got to be a flow of communication that makes the system work. So I'm going to use panel number 8 as a metaphor for that. So if you can look at panel number 8, you see a DNA strand and you see this kind of a peaceful, healing, oceanic background, and you see a solid ladder, and you see people climbing up the ladder and helping each other up the ladder. And that's what I call synergistic system. That is a healing system where the players are in the best interest of each other and they're pulling in the same direction and they're building something, and something out of it is better off than without the team. And we do have a call. So thank you very much for calling in. And how would you like me to call you? I don't ask what's your name anymore because have been criticized for saying, hey, Dr. Judy, why are you asking people to reveal their confidentiality? Well, I'm not. Just give me a name. So hi.
Okay. You can call me Karen.
Thanks, Karen. Thank you for calling in.
So this topic really resonates with me. I was raised in a family with a narcissistic mother, but it was really interesting in that there were times when she was very difficult, and then there were times when we got along really well. She was, I would say, she was probably narcissistic and borderline because, just some of the things that I've read.
Okay.
And so I grew up in this family. There were times when I wasn't exactly happy, but I plodded along. It was all I had. And then I went into a career in nursing and worked for these large organizations that were very bureaucratic and very hierarchical, and found myself working for a number of different dysfunctional bosses, many of whom I would categorize as having narcissistic traits.
Yeah.
And by the time I got into my 50s, I was so exhausted,
Yep.
emotionally, just
Yep.
taking care of everybody. And
Yes.
I've been through your program. I've even had some counseling from one of your therapists. So I've come a long way over the last 10 years. But it was a very gradual process for me trying to learn how to set boundaries. And I could only manage to do it in the work setting when I knew that I was close to retirement, because I'd always feared the consequences in that type of setting. And so that was sort of the beginning of my setting boundaries. And then once I did retire, there was a big explosion with my mother, who was aging and so forth, because she just didn't like the changes that she was seeing as I was becoming more independent, and she needed me to stay dependent to meet her needs. So, long story short, it's been a very long process, about 10 years for me. But I'm in a much better place now, and very, very discerning and selective about who I have in my social circle, so as not to
Okay.
get myself involved in these situations where there's a lot of imbalance in relationships. But I spent a good 20, almost 25 years working in a very bureaucratic situation that was hierarchical and disrespectful. And finally, I was so exhausted in my early 50s, I finally got the courage to pull back.
Yes. And you
But
mentioned that you started to consider pulling back seriously when you were at the end of your, close to your retirement. And that makes sense because at that point you have less to lose, right? So
right,
you need to
right.
leave the system, you leave the system. I'm hearing that
Yes.
you learned a lot. You learned how to vet people, and I refer to Panel 5 for that because, as you know, since you've done the work, permeable membranes, right, which is what you were, the people pleaser, the caregiver,
Yes.
very
Yes.
permeable. The nice
Yes.
people who want to please, the
Yes.
nice people who want to help. It's just that if
Yes.
we don't help ourselves, if we put ourselves in a blood sucking system, I call it the vampiring effect, that 1 plus 1 is going to be even less than who you are because, as you said, it's a depleting system. It's not an invigorating system. So now I think you get it to vet people. You can't let anybody, I'll use a medical term, you could see that I was a bio major. I think people can recognize all the biological models of the DNA and the cell and so on.
Mhm.
So you can't let people permeate your membrane, right? You have to vet
But
them.
the problem that I had is that I grew up in a time, I'm in my mid 60s, where I was programmed as a female,
Mhm.
for that role, and I believed it. I soaked it all up for years. I thought that was my role to please people, and I felt guilty, a tremendous amount of guilt, and that took a long time for me to understand that I am worthy too. And I even told my mother one time,
Mhm.
I know you're important, but I'm important too. So
Mhm.
there was just sort of a shift in my thinking. Now, she was not at all happy about the change, but
That's not.
part of my healing was being helped with your therapist, and also doing a lot of reading, bell hooks and patriarchy and so forth, and
Mhm.
Bethany Webster as well. And so now I no longer feel guilty when I set limits or don't engage in toxic situations. And I feel so much better.
I'm so
I mean,
happy
I'm
to hear
so much
that.
happier.
Yeah. Yeah. And the guilt hook is a big hook because, as you pointed out, you were groomed to be that person.
Yes,
You were groomed to
yes.
be the caretaker, the healer. And a lot of healers burn out. So I have a lot of people who come here, just about when they're definitely in panel 4, 5, 6, right? Sometimes even closer to breakdown. And they're physically, emotionally, they're spent. They're begging me to write them a letter so that they could take a few weeks off or a month off from their employer just to heal. And that's how bad it's gotten. And I'm all about prevention. So one of my favorite quotes that I use in my book, Be the Cause Healing Human Disconnect, is Einstein's quote, which is smart people solve problems and geniuses prevent them. And so the
Mhm.
more you, right, the more you know, the more you can say, well, I don't want to be on the other side of the problem and then have to solve it. I'd rather not step into the mess. And how do you do that? You learn the
Yes.
system so that you can look at it and say, well, if I sign up for this, then for sure I'll be triggered.
Yeah.
I'll be in
Yeah.
chaos. I'll be defending. My defenses will break down. And then it'll be even worse for me. So,
I've just learned to recognize the signs for unhealthy individuals.
Yes.
And be honest with you, I had to unravel an awful lot of conditioning. You know, if you were born in the mid 50s and you were a girl, and there were just certain roles. And I have spent the last, I will say, 10 years unraveling some of that I found no longer useful.
Yeah.
And I'm just a much happier person because I don't get involved with people that haven't done their own inner work.
Perfect.
And
And that's
I'm
rare.
just very conscious of it.
And it's rare, there aren't a lot of people doing a lot of their inner work. I mean, there are people, I think more and more people are interested in spirituality and psychology and healing. Certainly, I don't know if everyone is going into childhood wounds. Some people are trying to deal with their symptoms and medicating their symptoms. As many of you know, I'm just not a fan of dealing with the symptoms. Not that it's not useful to deal with them, because sometimes they're nasty and they're very bothersome, very stressful. So it's important to have a little bit of that. Also, it's just that if you don't deal with the cause, you don't deal with these childhood wounds, they never get healed. They always perpetuate, and they become like what I refer to as a psychovirus, and they keep repeating. And that's why I make a big deal out of dismantling the effects on the psyche. Narcissistic bosses' effects on the psyche are simply the trigger of panel 3, those horrible core beliefs that at home you thought, I'm not good enough, I'm not this enough, I'm not successful enough, I don't please enough, I'm not lovable, and on and on and on. And there are lists and lists of these horrible core beliefs, and they get embedded in the psyche. And even if your parents are dead and gone, even if they're dead and gone many years, it's still in there. And so what we have to do, which you've done the work on, is get in there and see where they emanated from, see what they are.
Exactly.
Right? Look at the truth value or lack of truth value of it and dismantle it, and then hold responsible the cause of where this dis-ease emanated from.
Well, and I spent the last 2.5 years really caring for my mother as a sole surviving child. Even though I had caregivers there, she still wanted me to be there.
Yes.
But her behavior was so horrendous, and it was all because I felt she had borderline personality. She had abandonment issues.
Yeah.
And I spent so much time observing her because I couldn't understand, where is this horrendous behavior coming from?
Not from you, but you were assigned the job of regulating her, okay, which you call because you're a nice person, and
right.
Up to a point.
And that was my job. They had programmed me for that. And I looked back at my grandmother and her dysfunction. So, I was forced to do the deep dive and do the inner work. But I'll tell anyone, if you have the courage, because it takes a lot of courage to look at yourself and your, family of origin, it is so worth it. It is so worth it.
Thanks for saying that.
You can't do it by yourself.
And I do tell people when they come here for their consultation, this is not the easiest therapy in the world. And we're going to guide you, and it's our responsibility to ask you the right questions. So it is a process. I know I have another caller, but I wanted to say to you that, of course, your mother doesn't like you individuating, separating, and of course, she'd just rather have you stuck in that system of pleasing, and that just didn't go her way. So I'm glad it went your way, and I really appreciate you sharing this. And I'll take the next caller because I know they've been patient.
Thank you, Dr. Judy,
you're
for
so
all
welcome.
you do.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Bye. And I hope that the caller hung in there or call back. Hi, is there another caller on the line?
Yes, there is. Thank you, Dr. Judy, for taking my call. I appreciate it very much.
Of course. And what name should I call you?
Beth, B-E-T-H, Beth.
Mm-hmm. Nice to talk to you. And how do you relate to this topic?
So I'm finding myself recently in a situation where it's a brand new job. And, you know, when it's a brand new job, you don't know what you're walking into sometimes.
Right.
And so it seems that there might be some narcissistic traits from the manager, but that kind of played out in that there's some nepotism and cronyism, and everybody except for me has some sort of familial link, and I am basically, I'm a nurse too, so I'm PRN. It feels like I'm just going to be used for friends and family plans in the workplace.
Okay.
And so
yeah, you could already.
I'd actually like to. Yeah, and I've only been there for a month. So my question is, you know, HR is bound to know about that, right? Probably. I mean, they know the relationships probably. Mm-hmm. And I just don't even know how to start to manage this myself, or if I should just forget it and go find another job.
Okay, look, that's always on the table for you. You can always go forget it and find another job. I think still it's worthwhile to dismantle the triggers, because if you know, I've heard this over and over again also. You go to HR and they're the flying monkeys that then report your disgruntled attitude toward the boss, who is the, you know, the head of all these family members who are in you know, on board of the company, and so sometimes it doesn't exactly work out really well. I'm sure that there are some HR people who are even-handed and truly want to balance the system and truly want to heal the disconnect between employer and employee, but it's not always the case. So here's what I'm suggesting that you do about it. And this is not an easy thing. However, you can use it as a growth exercise for you for a while, up to the point where it, you know, if it gets too obnoxious and too sickening, you decide, right? I mean, you're always in control of that. But wouldn't it be kind of interesting to look at this this situation as a growth arena for you to understand your own dynamics and figure out what the Freud you're doing there, what got you there, what kind of reactions you're having to these people, what kind of core beliefs are being triggered, how it is that you're defending against all of this mess, and then learn your very own dynamics. And as you're going through this horrible system at the workplace, learn how it began at an earlier point, which is probably your family that set you up for tolerating this kind of stuff, and then using it as a kind of a learning laboratory. And then when you're stronger, one of two things will happen. Either you won't care what they say and what they do, and you can just learn on their dime, get their paycheck, or you'll be strong enough to just exit stage left and have a lot more information about who you are and what drew you to people like this, and heal through your family issues. I know that was a long answer, but do you understand what I mean by this laboratory of learning? It's not a fun one, however.
I do.
Okay, so what do you...
And I appreciate the lengthy answer.
The which one?
I said I appreciate the lengthy answer. I needed that. It's been hard to sort through in the last week. I mean, I'm 58. This is not my first rodeo, not my first job.
Yeah.
But I walked into this situation, and actually it's a huge nationwide company, 6,000 employees nationwide.
Oh, wow.
And so it just, I'm baffled, because it's not like a privately owned nepotism factory, you know, saying it's not like that. And I cannot believe that HR has allowed this to get to this point?
Well, look at it globally, okay? Look how look what point we've gotten to globally, right? So all our little micro injuries and blueprints of abuse and neglect now mushroom into corporations that replicate it and mushroom into systems that replicate it, and then on a worldwide basis, boom, this is what we've got. Okay, so do you see how the micro grows? It's almost like, we talk about the coronavirus, right? COVID spread. So I'm talking about the psychovirus, how dangerous it is. And I know I have my own languaging, but that's how I see it. I see it as a psychovirus that keeps reverberating and passing from generation to generation and spreading in families and in corporations and globally. And now we're just a hot mess of a human race. And for those of you who've heard me talk about this, the mind map was intended to heal global disconnect, very ambitious. Healing global disconnect, join the human race. That's what it was called. And now I see that that's not possible to do until people do their own individual healing, right? You can't heal globally until you heal individually. So now I made it a micro map as opposed to a macro map, although it would be very interesting to have people look at it from a macro system as well.
Thank you very much for taking my question. I really appreciate your answer, and I appreciate what you do for folks. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate you saying it. Okay. So I hope everybody is getting it, that these micro blueprints, family of origin, they're multi-generational, they're multicultural, and if we don't heal them and dismantle them, then we pass them to the next generation, and our children become at the effect of systems gone wrong, and then they're going to wonder why they feel stupid and why they have to feel that they have to people please to be loved, and why they get embroiled in relationships that vampire their energy. And we see this all across the globe. It's not in particular to any culture, anything. And that's why I love that the mind map is visual, because people from different ages can relate to it. People from different ethnicities can relate to it. People from it's just easy, conceptually you can see. Of course, if you're abused and neglected, of course, something's going to happen to your psyche. And if you've been at the effect of people that have controlled and manipulated you, if you've been in toxic ties with parents who abuse and use you to fulfill their agendas, well, okay, are you so surprised that you end up in jobs where people use you and don't reward you enough? Are you so surprised you end up in relationships where you feel less than and devalued? Not surprising. One of the comments, one of the lines in my book is that parents set the bar, and oftentimes it is a low bar. And so we want to raise the bar through the process of dismantling all this mess on the psyche. So, going back to that narcissistic boss that sort of has you in that hostage situation because you need the paycheck and you need that job. And on some level, how I think one of the call-ins made a comment about mommy was nice. The first one, mommy was nice, and then not so nice. And so that intermittent reinforcement, I did a show called Molecules of Love. Okay. And then Christiana Davidson, my lovely therapist in London, and I talked about narcissism and intermittent reinforcement and how they interrelate. And they do interrelate. Why? Because if you're in a system and you get a little molecule of good, a tiny little bonus or a little smile from the boss or a pat on the head. Well, just like Vegas, if you put your money into the slot machine and a little comes back, wow, now you're going to shove the coins into the slot machine, hoping that more comes back. And Vegas is pretty set up to make sure that they come out on top and you don't. And unless you're some sort of a master statistician on gambling, you're probably not going to come out ahead. And in the workplace, you're not going to come out ahead because you're not in control. Speaking of control, watch the video that I created called Love and Intimacy versus Power and Control. I'm glad I could refer back to these videos because they all interconnect. And the more you see this dynamic from different angles and different topics, the smarter you will be. And basically, I want you to be psychologically wise. I don't want you to be a sucker to people and systems and manipulations and control. And so the way I see it is if you're in the control and manipulation game, then you're not in a love and vulnerability game. They're two different games of life. And so they're not going to interconnect. So are there any questions in the chat room, by the way?
Let me see real quick.
Okay.
It looks like mostly. I see. What's after being aware of your parents vampiring you?
What's after being aware?
Yes.
You mean what comes after?
I guess maybe that's what they're trying to.
Is understanding that that there are choices that you can make to not replicate those relationships. So looking at it as like, oh wow, that happened. Oh well, it happened because I needed my parents. That's natural. I needed to please them because maybe if I didn't please them, they'd kick me to the curb or hit me or something. Okay. And so now realizing that dynamic is sick. Okay. So what's next is awareness. And then after awareness is applying awareness to making sure that you don't get caught up in that system gone wrong again. And you vet people, and then you deal with all the feelings that came up around all of these controls and manipulations. And those feelings might be feelings of anger and betrayal and feelings of powerlessness and feelings of shame. So now therapeutically, you process your feelings, okay? And you become aware that these feelings are injurious to your well-being. And so through the psychoeducational system, you learn to identify these angry, upset, betraying, shameful feelings so that you don't get caught up in imploding on them for sure, or exploding and projecting them on other people. So basically, this is a psychoeducational way of playing a better game of life. Okay, so think of it as a psychoeducational healing course, if you will. And you're diving into your wounds, and then you understand how you reacted to it, and you understand now what you made it to mean, and now you understand why you're in chaos, and you understand why you need to defend in various ways. And then we process all of this so that it doesn't happen again. Remember, why are you going through this whole exercise? So that it doesn't happen again, that you become psychologically educated so that you can be the person who prevents the problems rather than solves the problems.
And
okay,
you do have another call, Dr. Judy.
Okay, awesome. Hi, what's your name, or what would you like me to call you?
You could call me Isabel.
Hi, Isabel. How are you? Thank you for calling in.
Thank you. I guess, so I related to this in the fact that growing up, my dad was very much the boss of the family. I've done my fair share of kind of like reading books and looking into the behaviors that he presented, and I really, really do think he was a narcissist. And I find myself making excuses for him quite a bunch. I've already moved out. I'm 22. I'm engaged.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And now he's really trying to get back into my life. And I find myself thinking, well, why did I distance myself in the first place? Why did I just kind of gaslighting myself, I guess. And he reached out to me, and he's actually a therapist himself, and he's telling me that it's not normal to create these boundaries, and that basically what I'm doing isn't right. I don't know. I just feel kind of at war with myself because I don't know anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay. So if he's a therapist, I don't get that statement that the boundaries thing. Of course, you have to have boundaries, okay? And
Yeah.
So do I recommend no contact with parents in an emergency? If they're just so sickening and destructive, then you got to do what you got to do. Most of the time, people manage with light contact, or what people have been calling gray rock contact, where there's just cordiality between people, instead of a real big intimacy. You're just, hey, how you doing? How's lunch? How was the salad? Good movie. See, like that level. And then you don't have to suffer that human disconnect, which is so hard. I'm betting that he doesn't even know his impact on you, and that's narcissism, is when he doesn't understand, like, why are you distancing yourself from me? What do you need boundaries with me for? So here's a person who's a therapist and doesn't seem to know. Of course, I don't know him, so I can't say about him. But what you're saying is that he doesn't know how to self-reflect and self-correct. And if you said to him specifically, Dad, look, I just want you to understand why I'm distancing myself from you. And then if you spelled it out to him, what do you think he'd say?
That's such a tough question. I don't know if I even want to go there, because I can't even imagine crossing that line with him. But I feel, but like he had a very rough childhood. I do know that, and it's almost like he can reflect in a way, because he will say, well, he says, how my childhood was, and he says, like, what more would you expect? He'll kind of say that.
Oh, great. So he's really understanding. Okay, I'm limited. Hey, daughter, I'm limited. So what more can you expect? It's just that. What's he doing to heal it? I don't know, other than explaining that you can't expect a lot. So maybe there's your answer. You can't expect a lot because he's not willing to dig in there and go in there. It's probably very painful. From the point of view of the narcissistically injured, that person shut their heart down for a reason, okay? They lack empathy because they've never been empathized with. And people ask me, well, how do you deal with narcissism? And my way is to enter their system of childhood wounds where their parents failed them, and the trust was broken, and there was no empathy there. So the order of things, okay, here's the order of things. In order to heal that narcissistic wound, you have to help that individual empathize with the hurt little child within themselves. You can't draw blood from a stone. You can't ask them to empathize with you when their little inner child is hurting. Get it? I want people
yes,
to be clear on that it's not like they're necessarily like, oh, I don't want to say. They're just shut down. It's like, okay, I've been so hurt that I don't want to go there. Forget human beings. I'll just function, and I'm locking my heart down. And how's the weather? And let's see. The only use I have for you is to use you or project on you or make you feel bad so I can feel better, or something dysfunctional like that. And that's the game of life that they play. Now, do you have to play with that? No. Okay. Can you understand that he was injured? I think you do. Is he saying, I don't know what to do? I don't know what to do. Well, he's a therapist. So go online, figure out these things that shut your heart down, and maybe I'll get a call from him one day. Who knows? Right? That you're not responsible for whether or not he heals. That's on him. Now, you're 22, you have a lovely future husband in your life. Hopefully, you're not marrying somebody that's recapitulating the wound and is going to be the boss that vampires you, right? And the person that lacks empathy, and the person who loves bombs you and then withdraws from you. I hope you're not choosing that person.
I found myself, kind of, I mean, I'm still young, but like in high school, I remember like being with kind of people that were similar, and just kind of like, oh, well, it was nothing serious. But as I grew up, I was able to see like kind of who people were and like the similarities to my dad. Yeah. And I think my dad really never cared for my fiance because they're very different. They're night and day. And he really just doesn't care for him, I think maybe because of that. But I really related to the previous caller whenever they said about I never knew what mood he was going to be in. He was either my best friend, you know what I mean, trying to
nice one
be best friend. Yes. Yeah. But then within sometimes minutes, he could just completely turn, or if I said, the wrong thing, it would just, and my siblings, I feel bad for them because they're younger. And I, in a way, I see like that I escaped. And
yeah, you probably did. I mean, you're getting married. You're not going to be living with him. But you see, unhealed people are easily triggered because they have these unhealed wounds and belief systems that they're not good enough, or they're not lovable, or they're not this or that. And so anything you do may be the wrong thing that you do, okay? Because just a look or a phrase might trigger off one of those panel 3 wounds, and then boom, there they go. Chaos, defenses, and breakdowns, and projecting all over you. And it's not a safe environment, is it, right? And so whether the boss is your dad or your boss is your employer, it's all the same thing. It's just that in one situation, the money is what you need and keeps you toxically tied. Also, you're copying the old blueprint. And in the other case, when you're a child, you need the parent's love. You want to please the parent. And so you figure that they don't love you. You're doing something wrong. You're the unlovable one. And that's what we dismantle in the course of the mind map system. All of these lies and misperceptions and belief systems that people have about themselves. Like, there's something wrong with me. My mom, my dad is very angry with me all the time. And they said that if I don't be nice, or if I don't do more, then I'm bad, however that goes. And then that's the gaslighting. You're sitting there scratching your head like, ooh, what did I do? What did I say? And maybe it was something displeasing to them. Who knows? Could be anything, really. It's like a kind of like a walking on eggshell situation. And so again,
Very much so. Yes.
right? You're 22 years old. Do you want to never speak to your father again? Probably not, I think. Yeah. Am I wrong? Right? You like never again? You don't want to speak?
Well, and that's kind of why I called, was because right now we have, like you said, we have a very cordial relationship. Like, I'll go over like on holidays or on birthdays. So it's not, I guess I misspoke, it's not completely no contact, but I don't have the desire to take it to the next level. And I've really had to think of,
perfectly, because it's love and connection are based on earnership, and he didn't earn your trust, he didn't earn it, so of course you don't want to take it to the next level. So the only level, when he says to you, honey, please understand that I've been injured, well, okay, I understand, but I guess because you haven't dealt with your injuries, I definitely don't want to activate them, so I'll just say, hi, how are you? Have a nice day. That doesn't mean you have to be disrespectful. Happy Father's Day, or whatever level. But here's where you do draw the line. This is where you vet his behavior. You're not, you're vetting his behavior. If he starts demeaning, devaluing, destroying, intercepting your relationship with your future husband, making you sick in any way, that's where you just draw the line and you back away. And even though I have this peaceful healing dialogue, and you guys can all grab a copy of it, it's in the forms section, it's called Peaceful Healing Dialogue. It's a way of talking to people. Sometimes it doesn't work with people who are so defended, because even if you say to them, Dad, I really want to talk to you. Well, what do you want to talk about? Oh, you really hurt my feelings. What are you talking about? I didn't hurt your feelings. You hurt my feelings. You see? So it's hard to do that with a regular person. They'll say, really, I hurt your feelings? What, tell me, what did I say? What could I do better? But with these defensive people, what are you talking about? You're too sensitive, or I didn't hurt your feelings. You got it wrong. You hurt my feelings. So then, checkmate. Okay, so really, do you want to enter into that conversation? As I'm talking here, you're forgetting that it's going to go nowhere fast. Understood? Nowhere fast.
Yes. And I mean, that's funny how you say too sensitive, because like growing up, there was like these phrases that he would use, and too sensitive, being dramatic, just kind of phrases that I would hear.
Yeah, and now people are so onto it. There are books written about it, or YouTube's on it. Like, oh, these are the narcissistic phrases. If they keep saying, oh, you're too sensitive, or get over it, or I don't know, there's like a boatload of narcissistic phrases to watch out for and know that you're being gaslit. So you can learn those phrases and go, oh, there it is again. But what are they ultimately doing? They're guarding their ego, they're guarding their heart. They don't know how to get vulnerable. Trust has been broken. They don't want to open up the wounds. Like, do not touch. Touch. And that's why it's hard to get them in therapy, because they don't want to open that space up. It's too much, too painful.
Thank you for answering that. It's definitely a battle I have been dealing with internally for a couple months. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Just remember, right now, your job is to have the greatest life you can have with yourself, with your future husband, with family if you're going to create that, and heal thyself so you don't visit this upon anyone. And your job is really not to heal them. Can you be cordial? I think you can muster that up. And for those of you who have such horrible parents that you can't muster it up, then don't muster it up. I know people who've been treated so poorly they never want to see their parents again. They just don't want to even say their name. They don't even want to call them mother or father. Fair enough, that's what happens sometimes. Okay, so congratulations. Have a wonderful life with your future husband, and keep educating yourself so that you don't become a sucker, okay? for these confusing, like, did I do something? Is this something wrong? Or like, the more you know, the more power you have and the more clarity, okay?
All right. Thank you, Dr. Judy. Have a good night.
You're welcome. Take care. Good night. Okay, so I think we're near the end of the show. I hope everyone is getting it. System gone wrong, narcissistic boss, narcissistic mother, narcissistic father. These kinds of blueprints lead you to get into other such dynamics, and just keep learning, getting emotionally healthy. Do the mind map system. Learn the mind map system. You can psychoeducate yourself through the videos. You can psychoeducate yourself through the videos and having the assistance of one of the team members bring you through the system of healing. Whatever it takes, spend that time. It's only 10 sessions versus tons and tons of therapy that most people do where they talk, they don't learn. And that's my pet peeve. You don't know how many people I see who I'll say to them, oh, so have you been in therapy? Yeah. How long? Oh, last person I talked to, 4 years. 4 years of CBT. 4 years of CBT, and you haven't learned much, you haven't accomplished much. Well, then something's missing here. Something, and I'm thinking what's missing is really dealing with the cause of the cognitive distortions. You got to go back to the cause, and that's how we work here. So for anybody who wants to explore more, please feel free to call. Please feel free to take advantage of either a free consultation or a full consultation, or buy the Mind Map video series. It's a simple way for you to learn it, and I really appreciate you tuning in, and for all the callers, and see you next week. Good night, everyone. And if you've enjoyed my show, please subscribe to my channel. If you need help, please call the number below.